Okay, hi guys, this is Mr. T or Mr. Tan here today, and we're doing the Contemporary Hospitality Management, Unit 1. And we are looking at really the question, and the question says, analyse the current scale, scope, and diversity of the hospitality industry. So, what's the first thing that we need to do when we're looking at the question?
Understand.
Good. We need to understand the question. And by understanding the question, the first thing we must do there is to identify the key words. Okay? So the key words here are what?
Analyze.
Analyze. Good. And what does analyze mean?
How one things affect another thing.
Good. How does one thing affect another? So you're on the ball, and that's superb. So that's the key word. And then the question says the current scale, scope, and diversity of the hospitality industry. So what's the next thing in this question that we need to find out?
The scale, the scope, and the diversity, and understand what the hospitality.
But what do we need to find out next before we can move on to that?
Hospitality industry.
We need to find out what is the hospitality industry. Okay, good. So we need to define what the hospitality industry is. We then need to say, what is the diversity of the hospitality industry? And then we need to find out the what?
Scale and scope.
Good, the scale and the scope. Okay. What do we mean by scope?
What the business does.
What the business does, what it's all about, and the limits of that business. Yes. So it's so important to understand the question before we can actually answer it. So the first thing we must do is to what? To understand, and then
Understand what is the hospitality?
yes, and we need to do now. What do we need to do now? We need to define it. Okay. So I'm going to take a definition. It's all on the online class, and I'm going to read this definition out. So now, if you're taking definitions from the internet or taking it from a book, you obviously have to Harvard reference. You have to show where the source has come from. So according to this definition, it says the hospitality industry is a broad category of fields within the service industry. That includes lodging, event planning, theme parks, transportation, cruise line, and additional fields within the tourism industry. Usage rate, or its inverse, and vacancy rate is an important variable for the hospitality industry. So you have one definition here. So use a definition first to start off with the question. Okay? After you've looked at that definition, then you need to go into really the diversity of it, all the different areas. Now, on your online class slides, we can see these include what? Hotels, cruise ships, event management, food and beverage, spas. Yeah, so it includes all these things: golf clubs, leisure facilities, event planning, seasonal business. So it includes a lot more. And also, you have this on the PDF document. It tells you as well the scope of the hospitality industry in more detail. So the scope includes hotels, similar accommodation. It includes holidays and short stay accommodation. It includes camping grounds. Throughout the UK, there's loads of camping grounds. It includes other accommodation. It includes restaurants. It includes beverages and servicing activities, convention and trade, show organisers, licensed clubs. They are also a part of hospitality. Takeaway foods, part of hospitality. Event catering. What do we mean by event management? What's an event management?
Oh, I know.
Yes.
It's like the management of an event.
Yes, good. Give me an example.
Organises.
Yes, an event for someone.
Yeah.
Give me an example of different types of events.
Weddings.
Weddings, birthdays, anniversaries,
Baby shower.
baby showers, christenings, stag do's, corporate meetings. You got to have in-house catering and other foods. So here on the slides, it tells you the diversity of the hospitality industry, yes? And we can actually see how it kind of overlaps with tourism. The grey area here is tourism. The blue area here is hospitality. Okay? So is everyone happy with the diversity?
Yes.
Okay, so now, once you've explained this, how should you explain this? You explain it in paragraph format. You can't write bullet points because Pearsons don't accept bullet points. Okay, so you can't just put hotel license. You can't do it. You have to write in paragraph format. Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And you also, what I would recommend to you is that when you're writing this, I would recommend to you to give examples. So the Marriott Hotel, as a large organisation, okay, the Marriott Hotel, Hilton Hotel, Ramada Hotel, and give some examples of restaurants. Give some examples of these things when you're talking about it, so it's easy for you. And you've all been in this. You all know about the baby spas and the event management. So give some examples when you're talking about it to make it easier for you. Yes? And it's not as if you don't know this already. You know it. You know what the hospitality is, and you know the diversity of it. This is the diversity. Now, when we're looking at the scale and scope, we have to look at kind of first the structure and how the organisation is set up, which leads on to 1.2. But I'm just going to briefly tell you this now, but we will touch upon it again in 1.2. So, what type of sectors do we have in the UK in terms of organisations? We have 3 sectors. What are they? Public sector, private sectors, and social enterprises. Excellent. So, when I say the public sector, give me some examples of the public sector. Transportation, police, NHS, schools, social services, hospitals. Good. Okay. Give me some examples of the private sector. What type of organisations do you have? Sole traders, partnerships, and limited companies. Good. So, the hospitality industry, what sector would you say that the hospitality industry is in?
Private.
In the private sector. And the majority of the organisations, what would you say? Sole trader, partnership, or limited company?
Partnership.
In fact, there's a wide range. You're both right. There's a wide range. The larger organisations like Hilton's, Ramadas are going to have limited liability. But a lot of the smaller organisations, the event managements, the small companies, may be just sole traders and partnerships. What's the difference between a limited company and a non-limited company, please?
Okay, so limited company means that if they go bankrupt, they can't come to your person, like the owner's personal house, like their address. Whereas if it's a sole trader, they can. They're allowed to come to their property and take like their socials, their
Yes, their personal possessions. Yeah. Good, excellent. So what you're saying to me is that because of the Companies Act 2006, if you are registered correctly, filling out a memorandum of association, articles of association, statement of compliance, share capital, directors' responsibilities, if you've completed all this documentation correctly, according to the Companies Act 2006, then you will have the status of a limited liability company. Limited liability limits you to the debts of the company so that people don't come to your own house and come to take your own personal possessions. But if you are a sole trader and partnership and you borrow money and your company goes bankrupt, people can come after you and take your personal possessions, according to the courts, to pay the debts that you owe as a sole trader or partnership. Very well done in terms of explaining the difference between the two. Okay, so now we know that a lot of these organisations are going to be either sole traders, partnerships, and the larger organisations like the Hiltons and Ramadas are going to be limited liability companies. That's very good. Now we need to look at the scale and scope, yes? So, in this documentation here, if we go down to page 18, I mean, the first thing you want to see in terms of, is page 16, in terms of the number of people that's being employed by hotels, by restaurants, by catering and event management. And here you can see in 2014, in thousands, the number of people being employed. So in total, hotels, over 500,000 people are being employed in the UK in hotels. In restaurants, you're talking about 1.5 million people. Over about 1.49 million people are being employed in restaurants and other related organisations.
That's
Okay.
in 1 year.
Yes, that was in 2014, correct. Okay. We know that in catering, 887,000 people in the UK were employed in catering. And we know that in event management, 23,000 people were employed in event management. In the total hospitality industry, in terms of employment, we know that 2.588 million people were employed in the hospitality industry. Why is that so important to the government? Taxes. Because who pays taxes? People. We pay taxes. So the people who are employed in these organisations are paying taxes, yes? And that helps the government to pay for what? Services. Public services. Thank you. Excellent. So, again, use this information on page 16 to state how many people are being employed in the hotels, restaurants, catering, event management, and in the total hospitality industry. The information's all here for you, yes? You must quote the source where you're getting it from. So you must quote and reference where you're getting it from, because otherwise it assumes that you're coming up with the information by yourself. But as long as you quote where you're getting it from, it's fine. So, the scope